Good morning, everyone. We have several here in the office and maybe we should do roll call to start
I
with.
think we could.
Okay, very good. Would you like to read it or me to read it?
Sure, absolutely. So, actually, Samantha can help me with this too, but, present are Natalie Stepler and Jeff Chair and Travis Hayes, from Grundy County. Then, we have several staff here, today. Samantha McMahon is, going to be, driving the vehicles today and so also be presenting the financial report. Also attending with Lisa Long and Kristen Delaney Cole. My craftly voice is Phil Densham. And then online it appears that we have David Erickson, Andrew Mutz, Nolan Seabrook, Corey Strasser from our staff is monitoring, Aaron from Boone County, Jamie Sturgill from Adams County, committee member. Jan, who I believe is Jan Gamar from Iowa Land Title Association, Jane Schultz, Jolyn Goodchild, a member of the committee. Anybody know who Linda is?
No, we do not have a last name on Linda.
Okay. Linda, you might enter a first last name in the chat pod if you would, just as a courtesy, so we can report your presence. Melissa Bonson, committee member. Megan Flyman from Davis County, and legislative co-chair. Nancy Booton from Lee County. Hattie Henners from Scott County. Renee Arnold from Davis County.
Dallas.
I'm sorry, Dallas County. It began with the D. Stacy Hurd from Story County. Kathy Boyd from Crawford.
No, Calhoun.
Calhoun.
Like a test.
I'm not
Let's
sure.
let you take it, Bill. Thank you.
I'm not sure who 641-390-0123.
Teresa Olson from Worth County.
Okay, thank
Sent
you.
that to
And is that the
permission.
full list?
It is.
Okay. Thank you, and that is the attendance so far.
Very good. Well, then we can roll right into the meeting summaries. There's 4 to approve. Were there any that had question? Sure.
I move to approve.
All 4
Sure,
in bulk. All right.
if that's okay.
If there's no question on any of the 4, we have a motion from Travis to approve
This
as
is Jamie.
presented. Jamie says she will second.
Yep.
Oh. Okay, thank you, Jamie. I'm not seeing any other comments, so calling for the committee, all in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We'll move to the legislative update.
The next item on the agenda is the legislative update, but Bob is not joined yet, and I did receive a text message from him that he will be joining us as soon as he can. So I would recommend going ahead and skipping to the financial reports with Samantha.
Sure, very good. Samantha, will you lead?
Okay, up on the screen is a vendor by account list. If anyone needs this separately, I'm more than happy to send this to them separately, but this is just for your reference. So you can track through the budget where the vendors go and what accounts they're in.
And this was suggested in the context of the finance subcommittee. Basically, they have a responsibility to review all bill payments, credit card charges every month, and they felt that it would be good to have a kind of a cheat sheet to say, okay, who are the vendors and what do they do? So if this is helpful to anybody else, and you need a separate copy, please let us know. Sorry for that.
All right, first quarter profit and loss, budgeted Income money market interest came in at $3,995.08. This is for the money market account that we set up at the end of November to offset the bank fees, which you can see here, the $3,385.36. So we're not seeing as good as numbers as we were hoping for, that the interest rates have dropped, but it is beneficial. Yeah, it's still income compared to what we were receiving and paying that $700 to $800 a month. Budgeted income came in at $435,283.22, with revolving income at $8,670,837.24, with total income for the quarter of $9,106,120.46. Budgeted expenses at $334,048.28 and then we did start doing the back file redaction again starting in March. So that's what that $5,212.68 is. And then also highlighted is the AccuSoft Prism expense that was approved to be moved to the reserve in February of $25,050. Depreciation for the quarter came in at $68,054.19, with total revolving expenses at $8,659,548.15, with total expenses of $9,091,913.22, with a total net income for the quarter of $14,207.24. Budgeted profit and loss for the quarter, budgeted income at $435,283.22, with budgeted expenses at $334,048.20, with a total net income for budgeted only for the quarter of $101,235.02. Balance sheet for the end of the quarter, the Bankers Trust account had $520,994.64. This is not actually what we have in the checking account, but because we are accrual-based accounting, this is the amount of transactions that were unreconciled as of March 31st, 2025. Total liability or assets and liabilities equaled 2 million. I'm sorry, I forgot the money market sweep account. For the end of the quarter, the money market sweep account had a balance of $1,260,692.26, with total assets and liabilities at $2,572,414.34.
Before you lose that, could you go back up to the top of the balance sheet?
Yep.
Because over the intervening weeks, there was some correspondence, and that is actually true, but there was a question about the reserves. So, a number of years ago, so this has been somewhat of a long-standing practice, that kind of even going back, I'd say the last time we had a real change in this was around 2017. At that time, we went through a process to consolidate funds into accounts, and then while this is a separate issue, we had to switch from Bank of America to Bankers Trust as our banker, and then we carried these reserve accounts forward. And there are 4 primary reserve accounts, and I'm going to just give you a quick description of each and what they were there for. So I'm going to start with the restricted operating reserve of $100,000. So kind of dating back almost to the beginning of these submissions, or at least after we had been in operation for a while and after we had some income, there was a decision made that we really always wanted to make sure that we had at least money in the bank in the event of an emergency. And so That is why there was referred to as the restricted operating reserve. And that is something that would be touched only in a very unusual situation. And obviously with the permission of the ESS Coordinating Committee. So it's sort of the piggy bank that in the worst case scenario that we had, just in case it was ever needed. The next one up is the redaction reserve. The redaction reserve actually fluctuates from time to time. And basically, when the redaction process was originally set up back in 2009 and 2010, the objective was that we were going to budget every month for the redaction of recently recorded documents. And sometimes we refer to those documents as forward file documents. All of those documents are redacted and processed and paid for as a part of the operating budget of ESS. But counties do go through processes to scan older records. Sometimes we refer to that as backfile records. It's just a term that we use. And usually what happens is we do not direct or control what counties do with their scanning processes. That's an independent decision that they make, and we don't tell them when to do it or what to do. But over the course of time, a lot of counties have an objective of getting older records online and then implement those redaction processes. And then they may get them all indexed right away, or they may hold on to the records and sort of as time permits, index them and then transfer them to our system. So we refer to a document as being complete if we have the indexing image and the indexing information and the image itself. And so they accumulate, and as time and resources permit, we run those through the redaction process, get them redacted. And then whether a document is forward file or backward file, we have our API set up so that the county land record system can make calls to our system and then retrieve the redacted versions of the document. And also receive the coordinates of the redactions so that if they want to use them locally for whatever reason, they have the ability to do that. As I said, this amount does fluctuate from time to time because as backfile documents come in, we redact them and we pay for the redaction. We do not charge the counties for any redaction service. When the money gets low, we come to you and the finance subcommittee and say, we need to move some money into the redaction reserve account so that we can do that. So we do not come back to the committee every time we spend money from the redaction reserve. It's just a part of our ordinary course of business. But we do come back to the finance subcommittee and the ESS Coordinating Committee if we need to replenish those funds at any point in time. The next point up is the software development and equipment maintenance reserve. We have a history of wanting to try and keep that fund in about the range of $350,000. A few years ago, we did a lot of software development and we spent some of that money down. We have not replenished it because we have focused on operating expenses. But if we ever decide to use the reserve fund, we'll come to the committee and ask for permission to do that. So for example, in February, we asked your permission to allocate roughly about $35,000 from the software development and equipment reserve for 2 software packages. One is for our AccuSoft image viewing service, and the other one is for our DB2 license or Database 2. It's an IBM license. Those are things that we need to run our system, but they're not small ticket items. And you gave us permission to pay for those out of the reserve. as a part of the budget amendment this time around, we're saying we have enough money, let's move the Prism image viewing software back into the budget, so that's part of our recommendation. But generally speaking, if we have a big project, or if something were to happen where we really had no choice but to do something with our system, we would recommend dipping into our redaction reserve. At this point in time, we don't have any specific recommendations on there, so this is really kind of just a part of our cash balance, but we do have the ability to use those funds. And in this particular reserve, we do ask the permission of the ESS committee and the finance subcommittee before we dip into it. Then the unrestricted reserve account is sort of a companion to the restricted operating reserve. And when we have needed funds in the past for some particular thing that may come up, we will utilize the redaction reserve, the unrestricted reserve. You know, we really haven't touched it much in a number of years, so it's sort of just another reserve account that we have. Is there a question or comment?
There's a couple comments in chat.
Okay.
And Aaron asked if all of those counts are interest bearing, the fund. Okay.
Generally speaking, they're treated as the same as other funds, so they really are a part of the sweep account that does help earn interest. So the answer to that is yes, and all of the funds are within the banker's trust account. So they aren't literally separate bank accounts. They're all in the same bank account, but they're accounted for separately.
Allocated parts of the budget.
Right. So anyway, we did receive some questions about that over the last month or so, and that's an answer to those questions. So I'm sorry, Samantha, for the interruption, but I want to make sure that we address that.
Moving on to the Fund 255 account with the State Treasurer's Office, the beginning balance was $166,262.86, with an ending balance of $166,034.46. Total receipts for the month were $39,653.54, which is the amount of the reimbursement from the State Treasurer's Office approved last week in the finance meeting.
Okay, so are there any questions on that quarterly report? These were reviewed and approved by the finance committee on the 8th at their meeting. But if there are other questions.
It's like Aaron has a question.
There's one more question from Aaron.
When we get into the budget, we can talk about that more specifically. But yes, there is an expense associated with the operation of the bank account. It's not unusual to have bank fees. I would describe, and they would describe, the banks would describe this as what they refer to as a full analysis account. And that means they keep track of how many transactions that we do, how many disbursements we do, by usage, everything that happens within the account is sort of an action that they have a fee for. And those fees are accumulated into a monthly bank account analysis fee. And so you just need to think about that as a fee for having a treasury management account that has a lot of transactions. This is not an account that, you know, is static. We have money flowing into it all the time. We're distributing money all the time. And from the bank point of view, that is an expense for us, but we are offsetting it with, because we moved to the sweep account, we're offsetting that with additional interest income. And even though we aren't earning as much interest as we were maybe in the last quarter or the quarter before that. We still, our net expense for the bank analysis account is less than it was before.
Mhm.
Samantha?
So I think, I'm not sure, Aaron, if this is what you're asking, but the $300 or $400 increase. So before we moved all of the money to the money market sweep account, we had an earner's credit, and that earner's credit was 0.25%, I believe. So every month we still owed an additional $700 to $900. So upon moving all that money to the money market sweep account, we're now making, I believe the interest rate right now is 1.36%. So we make approximately $1,200 to $1,300 a month right now. But because we moved all that money, we don't get we don't get that earner's credit anymore. So we're making a little bit of money. It's not where we thought we were gonna be, but the interest rates had dropped so much, but it's still an opportunity cost of $900 a month or so. Does that answer your question?
And then Melissa has a question too. You want to take that one?
The sweeps.
For the increase in the POS.
Yeah.
I don't have that ready, but yes, so there has been a significant increase in POS sales. I think almost 50% increase from 2024. And I can absolutely send out that
Can
comparison.
you show it in the P&L, the quarterly? It wouldn't show April, but
Oh, I'm
if
sorry.
you go up to the
Oh,
P&L.
yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I feel like it was brought up at the finance
It
committee.
was, yeah. And I mean, like,
'Cause
I
renewals.
could speak from my office. I mean, we
Mm.
don't really use a whole lot of credit card processes normally, but gosh, about probably 80% of our boat renewals, which there were quite a few.
I can bring up that
We're
comparison real
good.
fast.
Even when we said. and
Do you want me
there's
to
a
get that
3% charge,
comparison?
They handed
Uh,
it, so I mean,
it
it definitely
I think
has
it's
a.
what happened.
an effect.
Yeah, so for the first quarter, just for service fees, we made $35,880.17. So this is about a 50% increase from the year prior, which showed somewhere around 20,000.
And I imagine we'll probably see
Can
that
you
for the
scroll down?
next month too.
Oh,
just for
yeah.
those
Probably
people
we
coming
go-
in.
probably the
And then
whole
it will
next
die
quarter.
out.
It's been
I
staying
think that-
strong.
I think the basic question Melissa was at is, where do the boat renewals show up? In the P&L statement, and they show up in what you refer to as the point of sale service fee. And that's the amount for the first quarter that was a little over $35,000. And I guess on the other side of it is, you know, we have to also recognize that our merchant fee expenses have gone up a lot too. And so they go hand in hand, but it's still,
There.
it's still a net income for us. That is just,
Revenue.
that's the distribution of the
Like
actual
revolving.
recording fees. You have to go to budgeted
No,
expenses.
the point of sale payment.
To the.
That's the point of sale payments that came in the first quarter, 1,195,000.
I think we're saying the same thing. That's what we distributed.
Yep. It's
I'm
both.
sorry, that's what we earn in terms of payments that are due to the counties. That's different than the service fee, which is $35,000. And if you want to go down to the
That should-
expense side of it.
That should be close to the 1.2.
yeah.
And Carolyn's mentioning there too, that Lynn County had their online vote and had 43% done on through point of sale. So yeah, it's definitely people just use their card everywhere they go. Now
Right.
it's just
So-
okay.
So.
My point too, sorry.
That is the ESS income, but our merchant fees have gone up as well.
My main point was that that's additional funds going into your account that you're redispersing. So that costs an additional fee for our account management, or isn't that part of why we had a decrease or additional fees for the account, because that's money going in and out transactions?
There would have been additional money going in and out with the increase in point of sale in the first quarter. And I think you'll see that continue through April, because I know those fees and transactions were up a lot.
And probably actually through July, because their penalty doesn't start until then. So we're still having a lot of people use credit cards.
Okay. Any other questions on that quarterly report? Would someone make a motion to approve as presented?
This is Natalie. I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Natalie. Is there a second? Jolynn says she will second it. Thank you, Jolynn. Is there any other questions or further discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor of approving the first quarter report as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say nay. Okay, motion carries unanimously. And on to the 2024 audit report.
Just a quick update that we had a kind of an update meeting with the team at Genman with Robert Endres, our primary auditor. We expect to have maybe within the next week a draft of the final version of the audit. We did give them some updates on things, but they're essentially done. I'll let you read it for yourself. We're going to have the Genman team appear at the August Finance and ESS meetings to do the formal presentation of the audit report. I don't have any issues to identify for you to think about, because there weren't any in the audit. And we did talk to Robert a little bit about just some general impressions that some may have that the audit that we have isn't very thorough. We do not agree with that. We believe our audit is very thorough, as thorough as any county budget is audited. We are audited. And they do look at not just our finances, but our checks and balances, our control procedures. They look at our governance documents to make sure that when we spend money, we actually have permission from you to actually do those things. And so I would say it's very thorough, but I did mention to Robert that that's something that you may want to address in the August meeting as well, so that you can ask questions of them direct for yourself. Then the chart that Samantha is showing is just an indicator that our income in the first quarter and beyond into April from e-submission is above expectations. And it's great news, to actually be in a position where the number is above 2022. This is a significant milestone. When we talk about the budget, I'll talk more about this, but I'm just cautioning everybody to not get too excited that we're still just over a quarter into the year, and there's a lot of things happening in the marketplace. But so far the news this year has been good on the e-submission front. And that's really all I have to add on the financial reports. And no action is required on those items. I do want to maybe inquire as to whether Bob Rafferty is doing the meeting, and if so, I think you can move back to the legislative update.
Okay, very good. Shift back to legislative update, please. Thanks, Bob.
Sure. Phil, did you want to set the table? You want me to jump in and just give a summary of?
He wants to know if you want to give an introduction or if you just want him to go for it.
Well, the only introduction would be that, and by the way, census, Liliana is here too. Nick is not with us. He and his wife were expecting, and we weren't sure it's happened yet or not, but, Nick is not with us, but, Bob Rafferty is, with us as, one of the agents for the electronic services system. And no, I don't feel like I need to give you any more introduction. The last stop of the legislation that we're all interested in is the Senate Ways and Means Committee, and I defer to Bob for an update.
So, yeah, first off, Nick is hopefully sleeping right now. I had left the Capitol around 2:30. I know census was still there. And Nick, I got his text at, I think, 6:45 that he was heading home, 6:34 that he was heading home this morning. So they did adjourn. The Ways and Means did not take up the legislation for the changes, the fee increase, and the changes with Iowa land records. It is an issue that did not surprise us. We had pretty good insight early in session that there's no intention to move a bill through the Senate Ways and Means that had that fee increase in it. And the fact now, even though we had 95% certainty based on the factors that were at play that didn't want it to move through Ways and Means, we were 95% confident that would probably hold, barring something pretty significant. And obviously, while there was some really strong support in the House, that there was just a lack of interest in doing that in the Senate, and so it did not move. So nothing has happened with the bill. I know there's certainly an openness by Representative Nordman to continue to work on this during the interim. And I think the overall in the session, it obviously was a very challenging one for us all on this issue. Very emotional, very trying. The positive aspects that came about it, the bankers, or not the bankers, the realtors and the Bar Association actually endorsed and signed on the dotted line for the rate increase, and that was a big positive step. I didn't think that would happen at this session, although they certainly were coming around to it. So that I think that is a positive step. I'm hoping we can build on that and kind of work through the challenges that are very much out there, so that it would be great if somehow we could create some win-wins to go into session in a more unified front, so that hopefully that next year there will be an openness by the Senate, in specifically Ways and Means, to be willing to move a bill forward that had a fee increase in it. I'd be happy to open up questions at this point. And
I would just supplement that I sitting here, got an email from Megan, who wanted to Megan Kleiman, to just share that she did distribute an update to the members of the Reporters Association this morning. Not a lot of detail, just kind of a matter of fact, the legislature has adjourned, and that the governor has 30 days to sign bills into law, and that your legislative team, specifically Stacy and And Megan and Census would be working on a full legislative recap in the very near future. So she wanted me to share that. And anyway, there wasn't a lot of elaboration, just kind of the plain facts. And I think I would just supplement what Bob said by saying that it is in the Ways and Means Committee in the Senate. And there is an opportunity to work on it. And I think there are a lot of things to work on in the interim period. And so those plans are not fully formulated yet. Obviously, it's very fresh, but that's something that we'll be discussing internally and with the leadership of both this committee as well as the association to determine whatever next steps there might be. That would be
Phil,
my
you brought up
supplementary
a,
comment.
Phil, you bring up a good point. This is, we're in the middle of the biennium. So legislation that passed one chamber this year is still alive next year. So that bill, if it were not to change, doesn't have to go through the House again. Or if the Senate were to amend it, the House doesn't have to start over again. They would just work off whatever the Senate passes and how they with the Senate amendment. So that's kind of an important point and helpful in this process.
I don't have anything further. I'm sure Bob would take any other questions that you have. And certainly if the committee members wanted to express any comments, they certainly could at this point too.
Census, would you?
I would be adding on other recorders bill, so I think if you want to finish with Bob, or should I just add on that?
However you like.
Okay, so the recorders did introduce a bill to release liens on ATVs and OHV, and that bill passed unanimously and it was signed by the governor. Although it seemed small, it was actually something big that makes a huge difference. And a lot of people in the legislature were surprised that this was not started before. And then the second part is a bill was brought forward that would prohibit counties from charging a fee to operate OHVs and ATVs on secondary roads. And this was in relation to two counties that were doing that, which is Potawatomi and Mills. But within the process of those discussions, DNR did presentations on ATVs and how the funding of ATV occurs, and the fact that there are challenges regarding supporting funds for secondary roads. This resulted in a section in the standings bill that was passed yesterday, which is going to require an interim study that would be done on ATVs and OHVs across all 99 counties. It would be looking at fees required to support secondary roads and all the other extra fees that they need to look into. And so I think we did some work in having just discussions and having them understand how the ATV OHV funding process exists, how much goes into the county, and that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. This is the one thing that appeared in the standings bill. We didn't expect to see that, but I think for recorders, it's a positive because it means as time goes on, all of those other fees that you feel aren't catered for will now result to perhaps future progress for all of you.
Yeah. Thank you, Census, for that update. Comments from the committee at all? Or questions? Okay.
This is Natalie. I just have one. I just would like to thank the legislative team and everybody that was involved. I mean, I know there are lots of ups and downs and lots of time spent on it, so hopefully we can continue.
Yeah, electing
Next time.
the elected association representatives sure went above and beyond, and Census, thank you too for all that you did. It was like no other. I think we heard many times unprecedented. So maybe we'll leave it at that. Thank you, Bob, for your update. And hope Nick is able to catch up on his sleep and.
Well,
and-
with a new baby coming any day now, it's 2 days. after
You
due.
better get on that quick.
It may be a few months before he gets his sleep.
Oh, well, very good. Okay, so we'll circle back then down to the calendar year 2025 budget amendment. If you'd like to go next.
What about the finance subcommittee forwarded to, with their approval. But obviously, the committee here can, do whatever you want to do. I want to encourage, the members of the committee to kind of look at in parallel, the memo, that can be found on pages 23 and 24 of your packet. And start with the income category, and the bulletin list. And then do that in conjunction with looking at the actual budget spreadsheet that appears immediately following that, in your packet. I am primarily going to be working on the spreadsheet. And so if I miss a bullet or two, please, somebody mention it to me. And I will circle back and address that. The big picture is that for the first quarter, in fact, the first 4 months of activity has been a good one from a financial perspective and from an income perspective. That e-submission in particular, but also point of sale activity has been above projections. That said, the kind of the collective activity primarily relating to the maintenance fees and the maintenance credits for the counties is being changed because we're shifting from state fiscal year to a calendar year, and then we're actually only addressing half of the year to finish out 2025. And that changes the numbers on the income side quite a bit. But when you take the income overall and the expenditures, we're actually, ahead of where we were, or where we projected to be in terms of overall net income for the period. So as you look at the overall report, and those of you who are here physically, you can look at that big sheet if you want to look at it. But there are things that we did that basically for the months of March through April, we have converted, or since the February meeting, we converted budget numbers to actual numbers. And I really don't have any huge things to highlight within those. Just a matter of fact, we have projections and then we have actual numbers to look at. If there is something in blue, such as in the income column under Fund 255 expense reimbursement, you see that in the month of May. We try to identify those things that are known but not reconciled. So we know this is a real number, but it hasn't been reconciled, and so we're not ready to convert it from budget to actual. So that is something to look at. As you look further down in the spreadsheet, there are some items that are highlighted in yellow that at least at the time we presented to the finance subcommittee, they were pending. And some of those now are firmed up, but there are things that are worthy of discussion. Anything that is highlighted in gray is a recommended change in the budget. So those essentially make up the main recommendations that I'm making to you. And we can talk about each of those things. So the first thing that's changed is that I've actually slightly downgraded the net income, or I'm sorry, the income from the money market interest account. And as Samantha mentioned earlier, interest rates have dropped. We have not earned as much interest. So in March and April, we earned interest of 13.54 and 13.95. And I am recommending, just to be conservative, a reduction in the projected income to $1,300 a month for the remainder of the year. So it's not a big adjustment, but in my overall thinking, I try to be conservative on both the income side and the expense side for the remainder of the calendar year in most cases. The next item down, if you're looking at August, you can see that there was now a zero with the event income and the ILR conference registration. And I'm just gonna say, after consideration, and kind of where we are as a team, it took a lot of effort and bandwidth to put on the deputies conference this past September. It was a successful event, but there are some core things that we need to be focusing on too. For example, getting our reports out, getting the email newsletter out. We have an annual report to be prepared here in the next month or so, and we just think it would be prudent not to do the conference this year. We're not saying it's forever, and as you may have seen in a recent update from Kristen, that we're looking for ideas about maybe in lieu of that in-person event, doing a series of webinars, specifically focused on deputies. You'll see down in the expense side, I'll point this out, that it's a 1-to-1. So we're zeroing out the income there. We're not gonna have registration fees for that. But we're also zeroing out the expense side as well. So it always has been a wash, but it's worthy to note that that is a change. The next item down that I recommended a change in is that I've slightly downgraded what our original projected net income or total income from each submission would be, and those are highlighted in gray, and just projecting a flat $85,000 for the period of May through October. And if you go all the way over to the income to compare the budget that you adopted in February against what the next number is, we're still in a position where we're earning a little bit more net income than what we projected, and that primarily has to do with the good e-submission activity we've had in the first quarter. Expense reimbursement fund 255, that is the reimbursement request we make each month. Our current policy has been that we don't ask for a reimbursement amount that is any greater than what the actual income was from the prior month. We do know what the number is for May, and so we are changing that, but the projections for the rest of the year for Fund 255 are unchanged. The next two items down that are labeled cost sharing credit and local maintenance share. Basically what we're saying is that we're going to only be billing the counties for half a year, and we're only going to be paying the service providers for half a year. And that means that the amount of income we get from the counties is going to be less, and so is the cost sharing credit. So we basically took what was adopted in February and cut it by half just to reflect that reality. We also made an adjustment in the totals to reflect the change in status with regard to the county served by Fiddler. When we get to the other action items, you'll see the cost sharing report, and we'll go through that. And I'll just say that anything that's in the budget that is an action item, if you would prefer to do the action item first before adopting the budget amendment, I'm okay with that. It's up to you how you want to do that. They both go together, and so it's strictly a choice of the committee as to how you proceed.
Okay.
Okay, that is all the change, on the revenue side. And so looking at the totals, if you take everything into account, and this is primarily, driven by the fact that we're making that change in the maintenance payments. The projected income for the period is, $19,000 lower than what we originally projected. And that doesn't mean that income is falling, it just means that those invoices are gonna be, smaller. But overall, trying to maintain a conservative stance in terms of projected, gross income. So that takes me to the expense side of the equation, but, are there any questions on the revenue side before I jump into that? Okay, and we're gonna jump in. I don't see any questions. So, the first item that's highlighted in gray under expenses is the annual audit. This is just a change in the cash flow. Jan was ahead of schedule, so we had a higher bill in April than we originally anticipated, but our total cost is gonna be the same. So I just reduced the July number to $3,000, but there's no real change there. Accounting software services, we did see a modest increase in the subscription fee that we have for the Intuit hosted website for our accounting system. It went from 176 a month to 194 a month, and so we're recognizing that change. The bookkeeping CPA 980 item is actually associated primarily with Samantha's position as the account coordinator. As we'll see later in the budget materials or the packet, that I am recommending a compensation adjustment for Samantha. If you're wondering why are May and October highlighted, is because there are 3 payrolls in that month, in those months. So, we have 26 payrolls a year, and there's 2 months where there are 3 payrolls, and that's the only reason for that. And that's why the numbers are higher in those months as well. Okay, moving on. Yes, as insurance, we are seeing a slight increase in our cyber insurance and our errors and omissions and our directors and officers and our general liability insurance. It ended up being about what we projected it to be, but it is a slight increase. And so we've changed the number to $42,000 in July. Total projections are $45,500. We think when we get the final numbers, it'll actually be a little less than that, but we haven't received the bill as of this time. Okay. Then under the general category of office operations, the only change is related to the phone service, I believe. So a couple years ago, we made a change to a VoIP telephone system rather than a system that is sort of part of the infrastructure of the office. And the reason we did that is because we wanted to position the ESS team that at any time that the governing board was ready to kind of move on and move to a different location, that they would just be able to pick up the phones and take them with you and plug them into the internet. That monthly expense has increased from $202.15, where I think we have 4 phones for all our staff, to $210. So not a big change though, in that category. Nothing else has changed in terms of office expenses. It is what it is. I'd be happy to answer any questions about that. Okay, moving on. The next item that's highlighted in gray is the communications coordinator position. And there are changes recommended there to reflect the recommended compensation adjustment for the communications coordinator. I will cover that in more detail when we get to that action item. If you look in the next item down, in the month of September, that is where the ILO conference expense would have been, and that has been zeroed out just to balance it out. Historically speaking, our education and outreach budget has been a lot higher in prior years. We did more marketing, we did an annual tour of seminars, and we just did a lot more. And we had to, because of budget constraints, pare that back. Some of the main things that we do in that category are really the Survey Monkey and the MailChimp license, and then some other miscellaneous expenses. So no other changes in the education and outreach budget are recommended. We did those cuts a long time ago. The next items down are the two positions that are in customer support. And we have an account manager position, Lisa, and a customer support coordinator, Corey. As I mentioned, these are some of the positions that we're recommending a compensation adjustment for, and I'll talk more about that when we get there. I'm moving on down to ILR system operations. So there are changes here, and the changes are not related to a recommended compensation adjustment. The changes reflect the fact that we had our longtime technical lead leave us for another opportunity, and that means we need to make some personnel decisions about who is going to be fulfilling that role. I am recommending that we promote Myrna Addison to be the new technical lead. She's been with us several years and has grown tremendously. Then the next position down is the other software developer position performed by Nancy Agarwal. There are some adjustments there, but it is not a compensation change. If there is any change, it's just the fact that I made some adjustments to reflect what the budget reality is. If you look at what we actually estimated it to be back in February, we estimated it to be about $124,000 total net cost. That position ends up being, with these projections, about $5,000 less than that. So there are some savings there, but it doesn't relate to anything personnel wise. It just is what it is. One of the reasons that it probably is a savings is because in the first part of the year, Nancy was in a part-time position because of her family. And then I think there was just a little bit of lag moving her back to full-time compared to the original projection. The big change, I think, is the next line item down relating to the other software developer position. As I have indicated in a couple of different parts of the packet, I am recommending that we leave that position vacant through the remainder of the calendar year. This does not mean that we don't need software developers. We do. I just don't think this is the right time to be trying to fill a permanent position, given the current circumstances. And I outlined those in greater detail in the other documents that are in your packet. But I just think that there's been enough uncertainty, primarily to not be in a strong position to recruit a new developer to a full-time position. And also, I remain very concerned about the status of the economy. As I've shared with the Finance Subcommittee, I don't pretend to be a professional economist, but I think you'd be fooling yourself to not have a doubt in your mind about what is going to happen with the economy with all of the volatility in the world. And it's sure a lot easier to cut a contractor than it is to cut an employee. So this would be my recommendation for the remainder of the year. And that takes you to the other side of the recommendation, and that is that I've added in two items to the budget that were not there previously. The first is for the period of May through October, and added $14,000 a month into the budget with the idea that we would be able to hire developers on a contract basis with our two vendors that we selected through an RFQ process a couple of years ago. And actually hire outside contractors to help us with some of our development work. Associated with that, the next line item down is what is labeled as technical consulting. And the fact of the matter is that our technical lead has a big job, and it's hard to just take it over and fill those shoes. And we have worked out a plan to have our former technical lead serve us on a contract basis through the remainder of the calendar year. This is not a permanent arrangement. It is there to ease the transition and to provide technical assistance to Myrna and Nancy, who may encounter an issue that they've never dealt with before. And we can call upon Kelly on a limited basis. The amount of the arrangement is basically based on a commitment to be available for between 5 and 10 hours each week to assist as needed, and to do so under my supervision and authority. So I'm not saying it's going to be a flat amount in any particular month. The numbers are just based on how many weeks are there, and then multiplying by 10, just to put a maximum number on it. That's how we calculated that. The compensation rate would be $70 an hour, which is substantially less than contractor rates. And we're very happy that Kelly is willing to spend extra time in the evenings or on the weekends to help us out with the technical issue, or maybe to do some software development type work. One of the things I would offer as an example is that before he left, Kelly was in the midst of migrating our operating system from one vendor to another, from one product to another. And unfortunately, it just didn't all get done before he left. I think he would be in a position to help us finish that transition prior to the end of the year, and that is what I'm proposing to do. Then the next item down in that same category is data center and hosting services. There is inflation, so we have an agreement with Light Edge to do the hosting for the Alloy system. We're essentially in the cloud with them. And those expenses are going up a little bit compared to our original projections. And they may go up a little bit further, but these are the numbers that I know right now. So it's not a huge increase, but it is an inflationary adjustment. I apologize, I've covered a lot. There are a few things left to talk about, but are there any questions about any of those issues so far?
Just to confirm, so like the technical consulting with, these are just like maximums, like you don't anticipate more than likely or utilizing all that. It's just kind of a budgeted.
I think the way I have to answer that is that
It's
I'm
possible.
putting it in there with the expectation that we're going to spend it. Okay. And the reason is that, third-party consulting rates are $175 an hour, or somewhere in that range. And when I get to that topic later on the agenda, one of the points I would make is that we have a lot of things that we have deferred. And we happen to be in a window, maybe a short window, where we've earned more income than we projected. Rather than stay static, let's try and see what we can get done. So with that money in the budget, I want you to have it, the expectation that it's not a reserve. We would actually go forward, make a more detailed plan, and actually see what we should do. And those discussions are underway, both internally as well as conversations are happening with those two service providers. I don't have anything to recommend as a work authorization today. But sometime in the near future, I may be asking for a special meeting of this committee to authorize that. But I don't have enough detail yet to present that to you. But it is something that I believe in strongly enough that I want to make a recommendation to include it in the budget at this time.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I have a question also. So was that something that originally maybe Kelly was going to do? Any of those updates that we didn't have it in the budget before? Or just
It's something
because of
that-
revenue coming in,
it's
it's decided that?
Uh, I don't know that we would have been in a position to actually do some of those things. We've been in a kind of a holding pattern for longer than I want. And so, I honestly would say this is sort of an opportunity to kind of change things up and see if we can make a run at some of these things, whereas if we stayed with our previous structure, we might not have been able to make much progress. And part of that is because you kind of have you have an opportunity to have a clean slate with a company or a person or persons that we just did not have before. So could we have done some of that? I would say the chances that Kelly would have moved into that software development category are low. Because we probably would have kept him working on big picture infrastructure issues. Marina and Mancio only have so much capacity, so to me, this is sort of like a window of opportunity that might not have been there even if we hadn't had a staff change.
Okay, and you haven't shared with us yet, or is it later about what these, I guess, developments are going to be?
Well, I can tell you that we do have a backlog of issues that I remember. I'm talking to you, Nancy Booten. Of things that we wanted to do and wanted to do that didn't quite get finished. One of those was creating a new search alternative for reporters and e-submission. That's an example of something that we would like to be in a position to do. Even though the legislation did not pass, creating a notification system or a new version of Back to Blue is not trivial. And I'm not asking for your direction or permission to do that today. I'm just saying examples of things that potentially we could do, what I would describe as building the scaffold that you're gonna build that application on. There are some things that we could work on now that would put us in a position later on to maybe get it rolling. Okay, an example of that would be let's just take Back to Blue as an example. Okay, one of the things that has to happen to make the legislation work is that you have to have a means to designate a document as being shielded. Okay, and then you have to have a means to create a class of users who have permission to view shielded document. And then coupled with that, you have to have the means to prevent any other user that's not permissioned to be able to see that document. And I'm talking about the whole thing. You can't see the image. Doesn't matter whether it's redacted or not. You have to shield the image and you have to shield the index information so that to a non-permissioned user, you would not allow them to see the index and it wouldn't even show up in the search results. There's a whole lot of user interface that has to be built around that, but those are three infrastructure things that have to be done if you're going to have a shielding program as contemplated by the legislation, as you discussed at the end of last year, which didn't quite make it into the final bill. And so I'm gonna acknowledge that those are speculative in some respects because the law didn't pass. But shouldn't we do some things that maybe prepare us for that? And then there are some other things in that category. So it's a combination of backlog issues that people really wanted us to do. And then there are some forward-looking things that we should start work on and not just wait until January to do that. And again, I'm giving you a preview. I have not made a decision on what to recommend to you. That will come later. But I do know if we want to do those things, we have to have money in the budget.
Thank you for that explanation.
Yeah.
Started thinking yet that's
So
your recommendations likely yet this can.
my recommendation is to adopt the budget and
Right.
then I'm going to come back to you.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back to you within a month
Okay.
or so to talk about what specific things that we would work on. Okay, only a few things left to talk about in the budget amendment. The next one is under the category of AccuSoft. I mentioned it earlier, moving that out of the reserve expense category and back into the budget. However, the next item down that's highlighted in yellow, that would be the GP2 IBM license. I'm reserving action on that. I think I'm going to see how things play out, and then we may put it back in the budget at the August meeting. But I'm not moving forward with that at the present time, or I'm not making that recommendation. Then the next item is just simply a modest adjustment in the Microsoft Office 365 license. It was $112.50 per month for the combined staff. And just so everybody knows, I pay for my own license fee, so I'm not included in that. So this is for the ILR ESS team. It's an increase to $127.50 a month. The next item down is SUSE.
Is that Susie?
Samantha has a great name for it, but this is the operating system that we have been using, and we're not done with the migration. This is what I would propose that Kelly be working on. Okay, what I mentioned earlier. But in the meantime, our current license expires in June. If we want to remain compliant, we have to buy some licenses. And I've estimated a $3,000 spend for that. It wasn't in the budget before, it needs to be there again. Okay, the next item down is developer equipment, and this primarily relates to Myrna and Nancy. Their devices are about 5 years old, and we had some discussion recently about what can we do to refurbish or repair those, and it just seems like we're at the end of life. And for that reason, I'm recommending we put it in the budget to just go ahead and get each of them new devices. These are well-powered MacBook Pro devices, so they're not things to buy at Best Buy. And so I'm recommending that for the budget as well. Okay, we're down to the bottom of the list now, and I have two things here in under local maintenance expense. One is $143,000, which is a companion to the revenue item I mentioned earlier that we're gonna have to spend for 6 months of service with your local service providers, and then we would do a 4-year agreement with them in 2026. The $40,000 item, which is highlighted in yellow, primarily because it didn't have a clear fix on what the actual number would be. It is at best estimate, and it relates to the fact that we have 2 counties who are the only counties served by a particular service provider. So when I think about Solutions or Tyler or Tot, I'm thinking, okay, they have multiple counties, they can spread their costs. We write a fairly big check to them every year for maintenance costs. And there is an expectation in our maintenance agreement with them that when we do an update, that they do it, that they integrate with it. And I feel like we are fairly compensating them for that service. And I'm pleased to report that we made progress. Solutions and COT have fully integrated with our e-submission API. Tyler still has some work to do, but we've made progress, and I think we can move forward under this transition. I observed that those 2 counties, which are Ringgold County and Marshall County, have their service providers have challenges because they look at it from the standpoint of they're spending a lot of development time, and what are we going to give them? A couple $1,000? It's not even a real conversation. I have had conversations with Shisha and Nan, who both have indicated that they want to stay with their current service providers. And what we have is out of date. And so a change has to be made, and in order to keep those counties connected to Outlaw, we have to help them move to the new API. And there's really so much technical assistance that we can provide internally. We really need the service providers to do their share of the work. Avenue Insights, which is the service provider for Ringgold County, has asked us for supplemental compensation to cover the development time that they're spending in doing this integration. Our contracts with the local service providers basically say 2 things. They say, we expect you to keep up with our updates, but there's also a provision in there that says, if we're asking you to do something extraordinary, you may request supplemental compensation. And so, from my point of view, there's precedent for doing this, something like this, from the past in terms of saying, okay, something beyond the regular maintenance fee, maybe in order to help that service provider in that county stay connected. Because if we don't do that, we have an unsupported API that's based on older technology that just can't be allowed to operate. And so what do? Are we going to tell those 2 counties, I'm sorry, we're going to make you change service providers? Or are we going to just say, I guess you're not going to be connected to us anymore? Or there's something we can do to help facilitate this. So the amount here I acknowledge to you is the best estimate. I am reasonably certain that whatever arrangement we work out is not going to cover the full cost of the development work, just because they're doing something for one county, and they can't spread it across multiple counties. I have a meeting tomorrow with the Avenue team to hear what they have to say. I have made no commitments, but it is something that I think is reasonable to do. And we happen to be in a position where we have the resources to do it at this moment in time. And so it's included in my budget recommendation. Questions about that? Again, this is not the actual agreement or expenditure is not on the action item list. This is put it in the budget to be prepared to do something in the near future, but I don't have any more details to share at this time.
I mean, I do have a concern with supplying just 2 counties, whether it be, 2 or 4.
Are they?
When was the
paying-
last time there was an API or whatever update? Sorry, I'm not techie, so I have no idea of how often that has to be.
Probably 2009, 2010. So this is
What,
the
15 years ago?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Is it about half the price at that? Is that how much it's changed over time? I mean, is that,
It's not a completely different platform, and so instead of being a SOAP interface, it's what they refer to as a REST interface. We're using JSON instead of XML. It represents a big change, and we have for the last 3 years made a declaration to counties and the service providers to say end of life is coming for the SOAP API, please change. So a big part of Myrna's job the last 1.5 years has just been helping service providers make the change. So it's something that can't be kicked down the road much longer.
And would that update do anything else, I guess, to their program, their software to benefit them, or will it just be to benefit, I guess, using ILR? That
Well,
makes sense.
I think it's going to be a more steady and reliable platform, and some issues that we periodically have, like difficulty uploading a large document from a county to ILR, or counties getting stuck in downloaded status. For example, with the submission, I think those things are going to get better as a result of it. And because it's a more current platform, is going to be more secure. So as far as the functionality, we have 2 main functions. Each submission comes in, the recorder reviews it, and when they approve it, our systems talk to each other so that we can get the recording information and the county can download it into their system. And then we have a separate API for the upload, where your county transfers your records, whether they be forward file or back file, from the county system to ILR. These are core things that have to work in order to have a statewide system that integrates with each individual county system. So it is not a trivial thing. I don't know if that is your question or.
Well, I just didn't know if it would benefit the county in other ways separate than using Iowa land records, like their
it's
program.
just for Iowa Land Records access.
Yeah,
It's not a
I
software.
would hesitate to say that there are all kinds of other side benefits from it, because it is
It's driven. by-
specific to ILR.
I
Yeah.
kind of assume the answer, but
It's a good point. And does the county pay a portion? Are they gonna get billed by the provider too?
I would not support that. I can't guarantee that that wouldn't happen. But I think this is because this is specific to an ILR function. I feel like, we should help the county take care of it.
No, they haven't, there was no. We have no idea of how much this is costing or what they're gonna charge before they're doing it.
I hope so.
As I have observed the work in Ringgold County, for example, I am very confident that is the service provider is expending much more energy and resources than we would be compensating them for.
All that. We want her happy.
This is Jamie, is there a workaround for this? Like, do they have to have that API? Like, again, like I'm not techie either, but is there a workaround that they don't have to do this work? Is there something we can do to the ILR system to allow for their documents to continue to trickle in, but maybe add an additional filter? If that makes sense?
I would say no, there's not a workaround that would be satisfactory. So you could say, well, we'll have the county send us a flash drive every week or something like that. I just don't see anything like that being practical because, people want us to get documents posted timely. We need to get redaction done timely. And the API is what facilitates that almost instantaneous exchange of information.
And I guess my concern is we're paying our service providers. But then, whether it be, but then these two counties, and I know they're paying their service provider as well.
I think we have to look
I
at it
just-
maybe
yeah,
more
I
as a cost of doing business because it is a statewide system. It's,
I'm trying to,
Expending accountants who, because of the software he has. County piece, I understand that, I also, see that side of it too. I also see the side of what else do you do? You can't just tell them, well,
you're on your own.
you're on your own, so. Completely sympathize with your opinions and that's too.
And I don't want any county to be left out or be whatever. I just like, is there a way that they can pay a portion of it? I don't.
or go.
We haven't gotten that far in the conversation, so part of the discussion right now is.
Just proving this is a budget,
Right,
so it's in the budget, it doesn't mean.
so I would be, before any final action to do this, I would be bringing a specific amendment to that company's service arrangement to you with a more specific budget. And, when we get into those details, then maybe we can have a conversation with the reporter to see if there can be some sort of a cost share. I haven't gotten that far into the discussion yet. I just know it's coming. And I just feel like we should be in a position to contribute to whatever it is.
So the 40 is a placeholder.
It is a budget placeholder, yes, it is. I'm not committed to spend it yet. I will be coming back to with the specific recommendation before any money is spent. Okay. Thank you for those questions. And then just to finish up the budget presentation, I'm estimating about $1,400 a month in the bank account analysis fee. You may remember that I was estimating about $1,300 a month in interest income. So it's not a net income for us, but I think this is a realistic, based on our current experience, a realistic estimate through the remainder of the calendar year. And then the last items that are in both blue and in gray are estimates of what our merchant fees are gonna be for online transactional activities. I'm just trying to look at averages from the first 4 or 5 months and then extrapolating what that meant. I believe that would be a reasonable estimate to make. I don't have a reason to make a change in the estimate for the point of sale transaction fee, except for the fact that I do need to note that there are some additional expenses relating to PCI compliance fees in the month of May for the point of sale system. So that is a higher number than it would otherwise be, but it is, in my opinion, necessary and justified. So grand total. Total income under the proposed analysis would be $1,765,965. And total expenses would be $1,720,946.48, with projected income at $45,019, which is a substantial increase over where we were in February. With the budget amendment you adopted in February, the projected net income would be $2,835. And so I think we're leaving ourselves, even with some of the additional expenditures, a reasonable cushion going into the next several months from a balanced budget perspective.
Okay, committee. We've heard some questions here in the room. If there's anyone online from the committee that has a question they'd like to discuss, or if not, I would then ask your preference to either approve this now or go back down to the contracts and agreements and review those first and pass those, followed by the budget amendment. What's your preference?
My preference would be, let's go through the individual items, and then approve
And
the
then
budget.
come back.
Yes,
okay.
please.
Okay, group here, that's fine. Okay, so is it, Phil, just those 3 that are listed there with approval under contracts and amendments that need to get in before we approve the budget?
Well, pretty much every action item other than policies and procedures relates to the budget. So I would recommend let's just go ahead and talk about the maintenance invoices, and then we can deal with the contracts and the technical.
So we'll put it, we'll approve the budget amendment or consider it after contracts and agreements, which, okay,
Right.
at the, nearly the bottom of the agenda.
Okay.
Okay, so let's do maintenance invoices and assignment of credits review.
Yes. So I'm skipping ahead. If you're looking in the packet, you're looking at page 28. And I would just say that the original version of this memo was distributed on April 28th. I did update it on May 6th in conjunction with the ESS Finance Subcommittee meeting. And the items that are in your packet, I would explain by saying, if you look at pages 30 and 31, that is a reflection of what you approved back in February, just to give you something to compare against. But what we didn't have in February is an agreement with service providers to switch from a fiscal year to a calendar year and to only do a half-year maintenance plan for the balance of 2025. So that is what is represented on pages 32, 33, and 34. So the amount, the total amount, basically is half of what the regular fee would be, which would be $1,614.35. The exception. Mahaska,
Yeah,
thank
sorry.
you. The exception is Mahaska County that has a separate imaging service provider. So the total amount there of their invoice would be $2,199.50 because of their imaging provider. Everybody else, the kind of the gross invoice amount would be $1,614.35. And then the credit amount, which is also half of what it was originally projected to be, is represented in the middle column, and the total amount of credits would be $52,534.76. And the net contribution from the counties in total, this is what they would actually pay, would be $90,113.19. Was reviewed by the finance subcommittee and they did recommend it for approval. And I would be happy to answer any questions and I would request your approval.
Your motion?
So moved.
Travis has moved. Is there a second to approve?
Thank you very much.
You're good to go.
Mel has seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, hearing none, motion approved.
Okay, so I want to ask to skip over the policies and procedures.
You too,
item,
thank you.
And then go directly to contracts and agreements and the appointment of an ESS technical lead, which is found on page 37 of your packet. The memo that you find there also addresses the question of the independent contractor arrangement with Kelly Wallace. So you can talk about those one at a time, but they're both addressing that memo. In summary, shortly after Kelly announced his departure, we did have internal discussions about, okay, what are we gonna do? And obviously, one option is to go hire a recruiter or just see if we could go out and find somebody like Kelly to fill that position, which is, in my opinion, would be very hard to do, especially in the environment that we're in right now. And in conferring with Kelly, we both agreed that Myrna really had grown so much, and we really believed that she would be able to do the job. So Kelly and I met with Myrna and asked her if this would be something that she would be interested in doing. And she said yes, that she would be interested. She felt this would be a good growth opportunity. It does represent an increase in compensation. So our conclusion was this was probably the best option we have right now. And we really need somebody in that position because we're talking about functions that metaphorically are putting fingers in the dike all the time to keep everything running. It's not an 8 to 5 job. It's basically 24/7 to be ready for anything at any time. And Myrna has agreed to take it on. And I do wish to make a recommendation to promote her into this position as described herein.
Let's take action individually on these.
I would recommend you do this separately, yeah.
What I was thinking. also. Any questions on that appointment? Or comments?
I like the idea of promoting from within. And not incurring the cost of, you know, a recruiting firm or anything like that. So I think Kelly's done a phenomenal job for us in this time here and, I think the two of you thinking that she can handle it, that's all I need to hear on that, so.
That emotion.
So if nobody else has any comments, I would make a motion to, promote Myrna Addison to the full-time position of ESS ILR technical lead, effective June 2nd, 2025. With the compensation listed.
Jillian says she will second that motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call. All in favor of this appointment, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, motion is approved.
And I would recommend going ahead and skipping to the technical services agreement, the 1099. And that is found on page 41 and 42. It is not a complicated, I'm sorry, also page 43. This is not a complicated agreement. It specifies that the hourly rate would be $70 an hour. It specifies that it would be subject to my approval. The target expectation is 5 hours a week or up to 10. But that's something that we would basically monitor week to week. And then the other thing, just so everybody knows, is that, you know, Shelley during this period of time will continue to be connected to our system. So he'll be a part of Slack. He'll be reporting his hours in our Jira timekeeping system. All of the things that go with being a member of the team, we continue to remain active. A couple of things I would mention. I have reviewed this agreement with legal counsel, and I also sought the assistance of our HR third-party personnel company in reviewing this and actually helping me prepare. So I believe this has been sufficiently vetted. It is not intended to be permanent. It is intended to just be through the period of December 31st, 2025, and then we should have some other answers for longer term choices by then. I would request your approval.
I did note too that it says there's no specified minimum, so it's not necessarily 5, it could be 0. If there's something, it's unlikely,
I
but
did put that in, thank you for mentioning that. There's no guaranteed minimum, so, you know, if there's not work, there's not work, right? So we'll be reviewing that on a week-to-week basis.
any other questions? Or is there a motion to approve? Oh, do we need a motion though, Phil? It's not listed as an approval. Oh, sorry, I'm on technical services, work authorizations. That's the wrong line. All right, very good.
Mel moved.
Mel moved, thank you, Mel. And Travis will second. And hearing, is there any other discussion?
I'm gonna make a comment that when Phil told me that this agreement was being worked out, it gave me a sense of peace because of Kelly's expertise and his work ethic and his knowledge. And you guys all kind of know him. He is absolutely amazing in what he can do and how he can explain really technical things to people like us that simply don't get it. I'm not even kidding you. Like, I'm sure he said sometimes. He's an idiot to himself. And then he said, here's what you need to do, okay?
You know, it certainly helps, you know, the continuity and, you know, in this current day and age, people are often, you know, when they jump ship, they're like, not my problem,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. I think this seems very reasonable. Even the, you know, the fee to do this and, you know, I think that just shows to his character and how much he was, you know, invested in this project for such a long time. So, kudos to Kelly. I know he probably won't hear that, but you guys could tell him that from me. If you would, please.
Yeah, I agree. That compensation, I'm sure could have been more in some places for him to accept that. So, yes.
Okay.
So there was a motion.
Yep.
In a second.
Further discussion, we have Mel moving and Travis seconding, all in favor?
I,
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, motion carries. And back to then the ILR staff, is that where you'd like to? Yes.
I have a couple of supplementary comments. One is that, a full performance review was conducted for each of these, individuals. And it included both praise and discussions of opportunity for growth and improvement. Second, with the exception of Samantha, the other three are in a position where they haven't had a change in their base compensation in more than 2.5 years. I think this term has been misused, but we did provide at the end of the last calendar year a bonus payment to each of these that was essentially equivalent to a 3% adjustment. But it was not permanent. It was there to recognize work that they had performed and that that previously there had not been any opportunity for a permanent change. This is a permanent change in their base compensation. I think each of them have earned and justified. If you look at, we say very clearly here what the starting rate was and what the change would be. I believe it's reasonable. I believe that the characterization of the bonuses that were given back in December have been grossly unfair. These are valuable team members. They may not be the developers, but they keep the ship running. And two of them happen to be part-time. In the case of Samantha, not to talk about you while you're in the room, but you know, we're in a position to conduct a normal annual performance review, and this is reflective of that. And I just say, compared to where we were with the previous person, and where we are today, and what our experience was going through this year's audit, I am solidly endorsing the compensation changes that I've recommended to you.
I don't think they're right here.
I looked at,
Um,
I'm sorry.
that is,
Your question.
that is, well, no, it is not wrong, because when you look at the budget, the number is not gonna be the same, because this is
Budget
the
has
actual wage,
everything.
and that's everything, including benefits. And then, so the budget does account for benefit increases and
It's all
other things, so I actually take the actual numbers for taxes and benefits and 401k contribution, and all of that is baked in. So the number that you see in this memo is just the base gross compensation. So you will see differences with the budget, but that's the reason. And we have some employees who take advantage of benefits and others who don't. And so the numbers do vary because of that.
I took a look at the ISAC salary survey, for specifically our affiliate. And, you know, there's a lot of recorders who in the past 2 to 3 years have received 16, 17% increases. I don't think this is out of line at all. I think we have great staff here. They do a phenomenal job, and, I'm fully in favor of this, and I would make a motion to approve it.
Is
I'll
there
second. No.
Jamie, did you say second? I'm sorry.
I did not. I had a question.
you had a
Somebody else seconded it.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Go ahead, Jamie.
So I just am curious. I know we've kind of increased Kristen's hours since we backed her off to part-time. Is there an opportunity, Phil, to move that position into full-time in the near future? I feel like that's something, given recent circumstances, that we need to start considering.
I guess I'm gonna answer that by saying, I think we're right where we need to be for this moment in time. And we have made changes to increase hours. I think we're at the right number at this time. If I felt we were positioned to change the arrangement to be something more than that, I would recommend it, but I cannot recommend that at this time. It's not so much a budget issue as other circumstances, I put it that way.
Are there any other questions or comments about this motion to approve? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote.
Who was
All-
the second? Thank you, Natalie.
Sorry.
I didn't have it in my notes.
Yeah, sorry. Travis made the motion and Natalie seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Hi,
I,
Any opposed? Nay, please. Hearing none, the motion carries. Paper slipped back.
So we're sitting right at almost noon. Do you want to take a break? We
Lunch is
really
here.
only have one action item left. Would you prefer to push through and then have lunch?
We should take a break.
Okay.
Okay. So if we
15, 20.
came back at 12:15, would that be satisfactory for everybody online?
20.
Any-
All right, 20 minutes, please, and thank you. We'll pause the recording. Okay, we will resume where we left off. Right.
Now that you've finished that, then we can go back to the budget.
So calendar year 2025 budget amendment.
So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but with the actions that you first, the budget as presented is unchanged. For the budget amendment.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion. This is Natalie.
Thank you, Natalie. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Jamie. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. I'll call for the vote. All in favor of the approval? Aye, please.
Aye.
And
I,
any opposed? Please say nay. Hearing none, motion carries. So then you want to go to policies and procedures or? would you
Yes,
like to
let's
spin-
go. Get to the page and redirect you. So I would draw your attention to page 35 in your packet of materials. This was a proposed amendment to the policies and procedures, specifically Chapter 7, which is the ESS terms of service with respect to the website. And as you know, in the last year or so, we converted registration systems from self-registration to a central authentication service. We integrated the authentication service so that it would work for both the submission and the search application. And I guess the way I would say it is we've learned a few lessons about, okay, how did it really work? And one of the questions that we ask ourselves is, does our terms of service accurately describe what we are doing with respect to user accounts? And the result of that review was no, we were not actually communicating. It's not that we were communicating wrong information, it was just incomplete information. And I'm going to defer to Lisa to maybe elaborate further on the process, but my summary of it is that a user currently has to log in every so often to maintain their active account. And if they do not do that, which currently is set at 120 days, their account becomes inactive. So if they're paying attention, let's say, particularly if they're an individual user and not a member of an organization with an administrator, they will contact our support team and say, hey, I can't get in. Could you help me get in again? And we'll ask them, well, what was your user ID? You know, who are you with? Tell us about yourself. And then they try to look up their account and they see it's deactivated. Well, the way the system actually works is that if they become deactivated, they're essentially out of the system. And if somebody else comes in and applies to ask for the same username, that will happen. Because when that new person's account is set up, hey, nobody took it, you know, we're gonna do that. And then the person that previously registered come back and says, I want the same username. The answer is, I'm sorry, somebody took it. And we realized that we need to communicate openly to our users that, hey, if you let your account become inactive, you don't have a right to the same username. It goes back into the pool and somebody else should take it. And that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. But we didn't say that in our policies and procedures, and we don't say it in our terms of service. And so the primary change being made here, which is reflected at the bottom of page 35 in section 5, is a more accurate description of what we are actually doing. Now I'm going to refer to Lisa. She's going to tell you everything I got wrong.
I think you got it all right. That's the way the process works. It does cause some confusion on occasion, but we work through it. What else do you want me to say?
It's
Well,
hard
I want you to say, why do we do it that way?
Well, the 120 days, that's a security issue. That was why we decided on that. When we reactivate someone, we say to them, hey, we deactivated 120 days. Going forward, we encourage you to log in regularly. I tell them every 90 days just to keep them going. It is real hard when people try to update their passwords and there's 2 8-digit words in the system, or Travis, I don't know what yours is, but it is hard when there are more than one, and
It's surprising there would be duplicates.
right.
But then I'm weird. You know, there's not a lot of them.
But it does cause some confusion and Corey and I are like, why is this not working? And then we do a search by username to find it. So I think this is a good update to the policy and we've had discussions about what could maybe be changed in the future as well.
I would say, you know, from a administrative perspective, I know that people would like to claim ownership of their username, like as if it were a domain they purchased. But it's not like that. This is your system and a user does not claim any legal rights to a username. And if they let it go, well, this is what happens. So we feel it's better to actually get this in our terms of service, publish it, maybe in a future e-submission, or use customer newsletter, actually tell people, hey, this is what the rule is. What Lisa is referring to is we had a discussion the other day about whether or not the 120-day limit is correct and sufficient. Are we being too strict on that? And I think our answer was yes, we probably are being more strict on that than we need to be. I'm not asking you to make this change, but I'm just putting out there that it is possible in the not too distant future that we may go to the standard subcommittee and discuss with them a change in the policy to make it 365 days instead of 120 days. For some of our customers, the feedback that we get is, no, that's too short. I mean, why are you making it so short? And I think that I understand that concern. So if we would be in a position to say, hey, you didn't log in for a whole year, come on, you don't have any.
Do they have two factors?
The only users that we require two-factor on are administrators, or people that can do something that costs money.
So no.
Yeah, yeah, but a regular, like,
You know, you gotta change your password. I mean, we're forever changing our passwords in the court.
I can tell you that there was one deputy that when she found out that, because you could have a password forever in Legacy, when she found out that she was going to have to change her password every 90 days, she started making a list so that when it happened, she would have things
She
on
was
her
ready.
list. I'm like, oh, okay. Good for you.
Good for you.
Can you share that with the rest of
I
us?
was gonna say, where do you keep your list? In the
Right.
top desk drawer, probably. You know?
I'll close on this by just mentioning that we did review this with the standard subcommittee at their meeting on April 17th, and they did approve this change. So we would request your approval.
Any further discussion or questions from the committee?
We're going from 120 days, just so that list in here.
No, we're not.
It's just
No.
clarifying it, I think.
This is clarification, I
Spelling
think.
it out.
He said later on, they may.
Decrease. You could spin it when you, if you get, if standards decides yes, 365, because then we could celebrate, hey, you've been with us a year, you know, I mean, it can come out as some
Mhm.
positive marketing opportunity. Yeah, membership celebration. Whatever. All right, very good. Travis has made a motion. Anyone care to second approving these updates to the terms of service?
This is Natalie, I'll second.
All right, Travis has made the motion, Natalie seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call a motion or call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
I
Thank you.
All opposed, any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. And back to technical requirements.
Okay, so, what is kind of a hard thing to describe, but we're we're in a new era, in that we now have a service provider, a local service provider, who has declared that they do not they do not any longer wish to participate in the maintenance and support agreement. And no secret that service provider is critical. And so it does somewhat relate to the legislation that was pending this year, but it's not entirely associated with that because as we approach the end of this fiscal year, the end of the contract year, with the current maintenance agreements, it begs the question, what is our process going to be to communicate technical requirements to that service provider? Because ordinarily, all of our technical requirements are included in Appendix A and B, which are the scope of work description and the technical specifications. That's the way we've done it since the very beginning. So we have a maintenance agreement, we have it with every service provider, pretty much every maintenance agreement says the same thing. And every so often we update the Appendix A and B to reflect current technical standards or expectations, and that's the way we have communicated it. This particular service provider has in recent history seemed to be not so open to communicating with me in particular. Their technical team still works with our technical team. I've seen no change or degradation of communication there. When Lisa or Myrna communicate with them, they say, hey, we've got a problem, we need to fix it, identify a solution. It happens the way it's supposed to happen. And I just have to say that the technical support team at this particular service provider behaves in a very professional way. Okay, but we aren't at July 1 yet. We're still operating under the current agreement. And so the question that I ask myself is, in the future, starting on July 1, is there going to be any change in the way that we communicate? And I've been contemplating different mechanisms for doing that. And where I am currently leaning is to create a new section of the policies and procedures that basically spells out what our technical specifications are. And then as we need to change and update them, we go to the standards committee and we update the policies and procedures. Or maybe we put something in the policy and procedures that refers to, by reference, the appendices that we create and publish, and then that becomes the means for communication, at least in terms of in writing. The companion to that is likely going to be a communication with the recorders in those counties to say, we've updated the specifications and please communicate this to your service provider. And I'm sure we'll provide a copy technical team for the technical team as well. But it seems appropriate that in the absence of a formal agreement with a service provider, we need to have some other means to formally document for every service provider, not just the ones that we have an agreement with, what the scope of work and technical specifications are. And so I wanted to just have a conversation with the members of the committee about how you feel about that. Does it make sense? And based on this conversation, I may either refine that or I may change course, but my intention would be to take something more formally to the standards subcommittee at their meeting in July, and then bring that back to you for adoption or consideration, at least at your August meeting. So, it's something I'm working on. I want to get your input on it before going too far, much farther down that path. I do have a draft, by the way, but it's not ready for sure.
Seems like a logical approach. I mean, we are a statewide entity and so connect with all the statewide people and for those who don't have a software provider in under agreement, then that really all the is a contact point, because you wouldn't otherwise necessarily always have the consistent right person within that organization, but surely any recorder knows who to call if they have an issue. So it seems like a logical approach.
Phil, I have a question.
Yes,
So you have your quarterly meetings with service providers.
yes.
Do you have any indication whether the provider leaving the contract will continue with quarterly meetings? Or will that be done because they don't sign the contract?
Well, I can tell you what they've done so far, and that is that even though third parties have said we're not gonna have a contract anymore, my intention would be to continue to invite them to participate in the quarterly meetings. So I don't want to do anything that restricts communication. I just, it's gonna be different. And we'll just have to see how it plays out. But the way a quarterly meeting usually works is you have all the service providers, those who attend, and they don't want to talk in front of each other. So most of the time it's a monologue where I'm sharing information with them and then inviting them to ask questions either then or after the fact. So it mostly is an opportunity for us to provide information to everybody on an equivalent basis. Then if there's something specific that is particular to that service provider, then we will reach out to them and invite them to participate in a one-on-one. And all of the other service providers have been very good. We have open communications. We do have one-on-one conversations, but in recent history, that has not been the case with this particular service provider.
To Renee's comment, nothing was said about Fiddler leaving the contract due to pending legislation.
I would just, if I said it had anything to do with the legislation, I was misinterpreted or I misspoke.
No, you didn't. It was just, you noted that is a contract that is not continuing forward. And so that's when we began discussing
Yep.
how do we maintain
Right.
communication appropriately?
Yeah.
So that's where you're at.
This had nothing to do with legislation from that standpoint, because the fact is that we received a notice that we're not interested in continuing a contract. And now we have to talk about how do we move forward? Because I haven't taken any steps and really don't intend to take any steps to criticize or call anybody out. It's just the fact that the circumstances are different.
They are. So, sure, partners are all well. So that was your intention clearly.
Right.
So, let's see, Mel said, I agree, we continue with the invitations to the meeting, and that was the quarterly meeting with the vendors, correct? That she's referring to?
It would be my intention to continue
Yes.
the quarterly meetings. And I have no reason to exclude anybody from that. whether they choose to attend or participate is up to them.
Okay. Well, it's good that you're thinking about it. I think, I would feel like you're on track. Do you have any other thoughts or additions to that? Any other committee members have a comment on next steps?
Have we met with the recorders that are served by that service provider to discuss this with them?
It's just in the forming stages, so that's Phil talking about some ideas.
Right, right.
That would be a next step along the way, probably, but it hasn't been to this point.
So I guess I want to be stating the technical specifications and the policies and procedures would either be an issue with that. I don't know why that would be anyone would find that controversial or anything like that. I mean, it's just a simple fact of the matter that this is what's required. It seems pretty cut and dry. But
And it's
that's just me.
clear. It's on record that way.
And
In most current-
so it was not my intention to open up a dialogue on the legislation anyway. It's just that there's a bit of a factual change, and I'm exploring other actions for communicating the requirements to everybody.
Sounds
Yeah.
good. And so is your timeline, you said you mentioned July, maybe to get to standards, so.
The next standard meeting is in July,
Mhm.
and it would be based on this conversation, to take those ideas to them. Probably would have a specific proposal for an amendment to the policies and procedures relating to the technical specifications. And then, subject to their approval, it would be my intent to bring it back to the full committee at the August meeting.
Sure. Okay. Any other questions on that?
Okay,
Very good. Thank you.
if you do have any thoughts or you want to provide any input, after the meeting, please send me a note or whatever
Sure.
comes to your mind.
So-
I do, under contracts and agreements, I did want, this is just a matter of fact update that we have updated agreements with Solutions, with Tyler, with Todd,
Tyler Solutions,
Tyler Solutions, Todd.
Avenue,
Okay, we're still working on the Avenue,
DevNet,
and we have an agreement with DevNet.
Data.
Data is still in contact as well, with the IDA. So I don't have any concerns that I'm expressing here. I'm just giving you an update that we have agreements with all of those service providers. That we do not have an agreement with Fiddler, which everybody knew. The discussions have been going well from the standpoint that Solutions have, who am I forgetting again? Solutions and Todd have completed.
Tyler.
Solutions and Todd have completed the integration with the e-submission API. Fiddler has completed the integration with the e-submission API. And Avenue is almost done, and DevNet is almost done with the e-submission API. We don't really know for sure if Data has to do that or not, so that's a discussion still ahead of us. The county upload API.
Data, DAIDA, formerly Image Tech. And they do imaging from Mahaska County. Okay,
Yeah, just Mahaska.
So
is that what-
Tyler? Done or no?
Tyler is not done. Yeah. Now, we hope that it will be done by June 30th.
Yes, we do. As a Tyler, who do we talk to? Go to?
Person you're dealing with.
Julie is our primary contact.
Well, I'm sure it's done.
there's a manager that we're dealing with, his name is John Bates, and we communicated with them. So
We could
I
start
don't have
with-
anything more specific to share. I'm gonna be optimistic and say our goal is to have it done by June 30th. There's no,
One additional person who we've been working with since about the end of April is Nicholas Burney from Tyler. I'm doing some testing to ensure that there are no gaps. He's an automation engineer. I thought he was doing QA, but neither Myrna or I have seen any evidence that he's done any testing.
but no provider in progress on that yet. Our published deadline, the new one, is March 31st, 2026. So it's a little less than a year, and we're encouraging them to get started. We'll see how it goes. So I just want to give you an update on where all the service providers go. I'm not making any comments one way or the other.
Or is that a separate item, what you just spoke on? That was this one, right?
Okay, that was that one, and now the local service provider contract supplement. If I can get back to the right place on my list here. So if you look at,
Page 44.
page 44 and 45 and 46. And then the supporting documents follow, which is an excerpt of the master agreement with Lean Techniques, which is parallel with the rewrite code contract. We went through a full RFQ with the committee back in 2021 to choose supplemental technical service providers. These two firms were selected through that process, and we entered into formal contract agreements with them. I'm sorry, I did not provide the whole agreement because it was 65 or more pages long, and I didn't think you really wanted to get into that. But it is available if anybody wants to take a deep dive. Then, in addition to the contract, our process has been to put money in the budget, as you did earlier today, and then we will develop a project plan that is then converted to a work authorization that looks like this. And the work authorization says, okay, here's what we're gonna do, here's our budget for it, here's when it begins, here's when it ends, and we lay out what the statement of work is, and we then associate the personnel who are going to be working on it, what their hourly rate is, and then the two companies sign off. And I administer those contracts. I have always done it in partnership with Kelly. I'll now be doing this in partnership with Myrna. And this is how we conduct business. And then the way the contracts are specified, you know, when you have two guys working on the same project for 2 weeks at $150 an hour, it adds up. So this would be an example of a biweekly invoice we received during that period for these specific activities. In this particular case, most of the work related to the creation of our central authentication system on this particular time. So this is how we do it. This is how we have done it. And this is what you can expect me to bring back to you. Okay, at a future meeting. More details about what the scope is going to be, what the estimated cost would be. So I appreciate you allowing us to include those resources in the budget. And then when we have something more specific, then we will, bring it back to you for review and approval. And just going back to the memo, I would direct your attention to the bullets on page 35. So if you're thinking about what might do, I mentioned starting work on the statewide notification system. I mentioned starting work on the student program. I mentioned the changes to our current application that are in our backlog. You know, when I wrote this, I was trying to be ready that the legislation might have been approved. And if it was approved, then we would have to do development work to change the recording fee and make a number of other technical changes in our application. For example, our user interface provides for the calculation of an additional transaction fee. Okay, if that goes away, you have to take that out of the application. So that does represent one of the bullet points that might have been associated with the legislation. There may be other things that we bring to the table as well. An example would be Lynn County has made a request to us to use our on-demand payment system for an additional set of applications. Okay, it doesn't mean that we'll have to create a new payment system, but we would have to do some work to give that particular program in Lynn County, which I believe is an environmental permitting program that they're going to put online. They want to make it possible for people that just pay with their credit card online. And they would like to use the same payment system that we are using with them today for their online registration renewal system. Okay, that exists today. And we are not earning a lot of money from it, but there is some income from it. And in order to fulfill their request, we're going to have to spend some development time, you know, to make that happen. That would just be another example of something else that could come up.
So it's on that list of when Nancy's thing that you mentioned. That's been on the list for 10 years. Does it go on that kind of a list or does that get a priority?
Well, I would say it receives some measure of priority because it produces revenue for land records.
Modest.
It's modest revenue, but it is revenue. And once it's built, it just keeps on giving.
Anyway, it's on the list. Okay. So any questions on that or comments? Okay, how about technical services work authorizations?
That's what we talked about. The one before that related to going through cancer issue. And we've talked about that enough. We know exactly what to do there.
There's awareness for it and.
And incidentally, I've already given you updates on the API statuses, so you don't need to talk about that. So now we're in the category of I have answered any question about any subject that I can before we adjourn today.
What do you think of the Ragbri route this year?
You're coming.
I'm particularly interested in the one that lives in Minnesota. Yeah. Anything else?
Just want to share for like the statewide notification system. I had Tyler give me a quote on it again, and I am a little confused with the quote because I can't tell if it's just for the fraud notification, because they also offer a document search now as well. So there's a total in here, a one-time fee. For one, it says 8,400, and then there's another one-time fee of 10,750. So, but I'm still not. So that total, if you do those together, would be 21,300. I assume that would be if I did the document search and the fraud notification system. With an annual reoccurring fee of $2,100. That's a lot.
It is a lot.
And I know we've talked about a fraud notification system or some sort of notification system for a few years now. So I would like to.
Yeah.
I like that that's
Put
listed on
numbers
here
on-
as one of the, I guess, somewhat
on the
priorities, I think.
potential
of this.
projects
Yeah.
list, yeah.
potential.
I would say, I would just say that listening to the broad membership of the Reporters Association, I have interpreted those conversations to mean that is a very high priority. And that is why it's on the list. And we've been through internally here about 3 different iterations of what that might look like. That boiled it down to what are the 4 things that we have to do to make something like that work. And we still believe that it is feasible to connect a notification system to the current search application. And I've gotten in trouble for this before, for people interpreting me to say it will be easy. But it will be more efficient if we do it that way, because the search application already exists. The user registration system already exists. And I think we have a pretty good idea about what architecture would be necessary to make it happen. And we've also thought about what are some of the business rules that we want to put in place in order to keep it manageable. For example, I don't think we would go so far as to say that, we would maintain some of these notification accounts in perpetuity. They would have to maybe log in once a year.
Yeah, it's kind of like
Some-
other.
That's the birthday card.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So,
do we still know how to communicate with you?
Right,
Email or phone?
exactly.
I feel like it's a high enough priority that, given that we've had the benefit of some additional income recently, I think we should go ahead and get started. And that would be my intention. But I'm not going to spend any money on it until I come back and get you.
So Jolene has commented, that is a lot. I am hoping in the future we can come up with some type of fraud notification system through ILR.
I don't know how many happen. But I can just say that the one thing that would be provided that does not exist today is that it would be inclusive of every county that participates in our land records. And the methodology would be the same for every county. And that ubiquity is something that an individual provider may not be as equipped to do.
That's what I was gonna say, that that's be the beauty of having a system like that here, is that, people own property in multiple jurisdictions. So that would, being able to encompass all, it seems like a win to me.
Yeah. Natalie, did you say they were charging you 10,000?
More than that.
The total of that. but you
18,
weren't
so
sure.
if it's one county 18 and you looked at all the counties, how much would that all come to? About 100?
I mean, it depends on the size of the county. I think is
Probably, yeah.
where some of that comes from.
And
Like I say, I
assistant would be
don't know if anybody else, I guess, can look at it in a different way and see, but I don't know if, I think that's their document search and their fraud. As far, I don't know if Fiddler is the only service provider that's part of their package, I guess. I mean, this isn't part of the basic Tyler package. You'd have
Don't
to,
plan to shop
Yeah.
software, but.
Oh, there was a comment after.
I'll say, thank you, Phil. One system that residents can sign up for notifications through statewide makes sense. Having someone access one or two or 99 different systems to sign up doesn't. What's this? Scott County says 98 of 99 have fraud alert available to them through their local provider. DevNet is unknown. But it's not free and it's not included in our existing software. So it may be available, but it's not within the budget.
Available, but
And this was
18.
something we voted on as an association. I don't even know how many years ago. It's been 2 or 3 years ago now, was to
For school,
make
with
this
your-
accessible for everyone.
Mhm.
Without
I
an
think-
additional fee.
Yeah. I just want to state for the record, and I've said this publicly at an association conference before. There's nothing that I've heard from reporters who have communicated about this that suggests that that a county couldn't use another system if they want to. There's nothing about this that we're intending to have an adverse effect on any county or any service provider. It's just that a multi-county system can do something that individual county systems cannot.
Right.
So
So it's a good thing to considering, I guess, keep it on the list, right?
So, again, I will bring this back to the committee, and the committee will decide whether you authorize doing that work or not. And this meeting is an opportunity for us to communicate publicly that it is something being actively discussed. So we would welcome input from
Yeah,
reporters in any office.
right. By all means, reach out to your representatives. That's why we have our district reps. We have one from every district and large county as well. That gets them right connected into the conversation, and it's nice to have, real examples that we can share saying, so and so suggested. And that's how the representative approach works well. So,
With that, I don't have anything further for you today.
okay, anybody else? I had one thing I just wanted to ask about, a suggestion for our next meeting, and that is, since ISAC conference is the 20th through the 22nd of August, many will be likely attending here in Des Moines. I wondered if we would consider moving that quarterly meeting instead of the 14th, but to the afternoon of the 19th, so that it could be right in front of ISAC and we could all be present, or as many as possible could be present. And I sent a note out to the committee suggesting that, and I only had Denise wasn't able to be here today, but she's emailed back. Just wanted to let you know I'm fine with having the August meeting at ISAC. Whatever works for the majority is fine with me.
I'm different, that's why I didn't respond to you.
Yep.
Sorry, I just assume I tell you today.
Yeah, what do you think?
Fine with me.
Jolynn, I think, had also kind of nodded. I don't know if she's not. Let's see here. No, I can attend remotely, but I won't be able to be there in person that day. Okay. And Jolynn said, fine with me. So if we shift it to and Jamie's good. Okay, so let's agreeable to yeah, majority, right? the
We
majority.
probably want to check with Dylan. He's not here.
Eric and David.
Yeah. He's
I don't know if he's still back. Confirm with them, I guess, too.
And
But
the auditor, didn't you talk about having Devin? No, not.
Yeah, we'll have to check with Robert.
Change the
Yeah,
date.
yeah, change.
Then met, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
To the 19th.
The 19th,
So what time do you want to start?
19th, what time?
Well, it'd be the afternoon is what I was thinking.
Yep, I'm trying.
Pam's typing.
I-
Go by Sam. Okay, don't want to be rude. Okay, are you okay? Yes, asking David and Eric and they're around too.
That, well, from a calendar perspective, fine with us,
Sure.
from the staff perspective. And then the other thing is, the last year and a half, your meetings have been so jam-packed with stuff that we really have required more time. I'm thinking about the August meeting and I don't anticipate a super heavy agenda. So I think it's feasible.
Oh,
Did we cut someone off?
Sorry, did we cut, David, did you have a response?
Sorry, what was the question?
Talking about moving the August meeting to the 19th instead of the 14th. Would that work?
Oh,
for
that's
you?
fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm having some audio troubles here. I can't hear everything very well, so that's fine with me.
Okay, thank you.
Standard.
All right. Well, then we'll aim for that, if that's agreeable. Yeah,
Are you thinking the same time?
I think it'll have to be in the afternoon, probably. I don't know. It seems like it seemed to me like that would give everybody time to travel in and 'cause you're gonna be here to stay, so I don't know. Yeah. One be fine.
But that, anybody has any requirements?
Very good. Any other less important, I'm sure. The audio does cut out sometimes. Okay. Any other details or for the good of the whole? All right, hearing none, we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you for everyone who attended.
Yeah, thank you.